Yes. Welcome to episode 6 of Conversations with Chai. With me, I have Ariana,
What's up?
member, founder of Drinks First. You might have seen her podcast. You might have gone to a party. You've definitely gone to a party.
Hopefully.
Appreciate you doing this. But like, I didn't want to stop our conversation because I really want you to understand. Like, I think it's super fire that you are the draw that gets these places like popping, right? Like I was saying back, you
That's
probably
so
caught the
kind.
we're not cutting it, so like you'll definitely hear me talk about it before, right? Like the fact that you are able to draw like me and the people like me to a Jane and a Georgia room, right? Like, and I hope like you understand like the value that you provide. Do you?
I I I understand the product that I'm bringing to these
Mm-hmm.
places, but I want to make them see that there's value to it and there's value to our like communities and to other communities and the access to all of these places. It's a good thing to have like diversity and have different people in your spaces. So, I mean, I hope they view me as an asset. I like would appreciate if they did, but I'm grateful for the people that I work with too, because they're taking a chance on me and the things I'm doing.
I see you humbly answering that, but I really want you to know that, like, I hope that you're demanding, like, the value that you actually, like, bring. Cause I get it. Like, humble. Yeah, I feel that, right? Like, she's not talking about it, but I will, right? You are, I don't want to say underestimated, undervalued, right? Like, you are a draw, right? Like, getting a drinks first party, like, it's a guaranteed, like, hey, we're gonna pack this venue tonight, right?
I've been lucky enough that that's been the case, so I
I like the humbleness. Don't say it's like luck, right? Like you've built a product and you've built a fire product, right? That people like just sign up for. Like I have friends that like listen, I'm not like really the going out type, but I still have been to a couple of your parties because
I
I
love
have
that.
friends that like go to every single thing. It's like, oh, drinks versus having a singles party.
I
I'm
love
I'm
that.
there.
That's like the best thing to hear. Both things that there's like people who come to parties and want to keep coming back, and then like people who are like, I'm not really much of a party person, but like if Drinks First is doing something, like I'd consider going, you know? That's like the best compliment I could get.
And I think like just from like a consumer, just somebody who's like been to one of your events, I think the product is also so fire, right? Like
Thank
I don't
you.
have like again like not the biggest fan of just going out to like a club and not really having anything's going on.
Yeah.
But anytime I've gone to one of your parties, I'm just like, oh, like this is like a vibe. Like this is fun. Like the music is good, the people are different, the people are interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I know like a lot of yours are like singles parties, right? And I've gone and I've just like kicked it.
Yeah, you don't have to be single. I think that like Drinks First as was building it, and like I'm happy to give more background on what it is if you
Yeah,
want me
yeah.
to.
No, no, like, definitely. We'll definitely get into all of
Yeah.
that, but
It's synonymous with dating, but I think it's also for anybody who wants to meet people
mhm.
because it's kind of curating a space for that social permission that like when you go out to a bar on a normal night, like you might be with your boys or your friends or whatever, and like I think even when you go out with your girls, you're like, "Oh, it'd be cool to meet someone while I'm out. It'd be cool to like meet new people," but it doesn't happen that often.
Mhm.
Like you're with your friends, you're vibing, you're not necessarily like putting yourself out there, or it might be kind of hard to like approach like a group of people or somebody you might find interesting or intriguing, even if that's like in a friendly way. So I think Drinks First, what it does is it creates these spaces that aren't like overly prescriptive about like what you're supposed to do when you're there, but it's like, okay, everybody knows they're here for a Drinks First event.
Mhm.
And that means they kind of come in with a different mindset of like being open-minded to just like talking to someone, putting yourself out there, like having conversations with people, whether that means okay, I might be like romantically interested, but it could also be like you seem dope, like we could be friends. Like so many people have made like really close friends from just coming to Drinks First stuff.
That's fire, and, like, I'm assuming some of that is, like, by design from you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for
So,
sure.
kinda going into that and kind of also wanting to hear, like, the inception point of that, right? Like, why get into this? Like, why get into the dating space of, like, New York City? It's already such, like, a interesting hellhole, right? Why
Yeah,
why did you decide, like, "Yo, I'm gonna go into this," right? Like, I'm assuming this is, like, the origination of, like, first the podcast and
yeah.
then the parties.
Yeah, so I started Drinks First in 2019. I'm born and raised in New York City, like, in Manhattan. It's everything I know. Went away for college. I was at school at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and then came back in 2019 had my full-time job, was working from home, or like living at my parents' place, because my parents live in the city. And I had like a 9 to 5, and after 5, my mom was like, "You're not doing anything with your life besides like going out and meeting friends. Like you should get a hobby."
Okay.
Obviously as like
We love our supportive
any
brown
brown
parents. We love our
parents,
supportive brown
they're like,
parents.
"You're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Like do more." And I was like, "Bet, you're right. Like I probably should be doing something a little bit more." And at the time, I was like lucky enough for growing up in New York City. I had a community like when I moved back from college. So I had all of these friends, either people who had like moved to the city, people from college, or people who I'd known growing up, people from camp, people from X, Y, and Z. I have an older brother, his friends, and it didn't matter age, gender, sex, orientation, whatever. Everybody loves talking about dating. It's like one of the most important things that like friends get together and kind of like talk about. And the conversations I was having over and over and over again was dating is so hard. I'm so tired of the apps. And this was in 2019 before COVID,
Hmm.
before we were like all forced to be online, forced to be on the apps for connection.
Yeah.
People were getting tired of it. And there was fatigue. And there's like, I thought I have so many great friends. Like, why is it so hard for people to meet each other in one of the largest, most diverse cities in the world? And I'm sure you have a lot of really great friends. Like, why aren't these people meeting?
Hmm.
Like, I'm sure you could vouch for your friends. I can vouch for my friends. Like, there's something missing here. And obviously, like, apps are a good way to meet people. Going out, putting yourself out there is a good way to maybe meet people, but it's not the easiest thing to do. And there are a lot of downsides, especially like for on apps, like people who are people of color have a harder time like performing well on dating apps. Like there's just more ghosting that happens. It's very gamified. Like you're swiping left right in like a matter of seconds, right?
Hmm.
You make a snap judgment on someone, and that's not actually how attraction works in real life. So, I mean, your story, right, with your girlfriend, like you guys matched on an app, but I think that connection probably happened more in person, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that's like a cool part of like your podcast as a whole, right? Because like I think it forces people to make a little bit more of an educated decision going into like step one. Because I
Definitely.
think a lot of us like, and that's why you hear like the constant like New York City dating is terrible, right? It's because everybody is always on first dates. Like nobody at step 3 or like date 3 is like, oh, New York City dating is terrible, right?
Yeah,
It's always like, not that it doesn't happen, right?
it's
But
just this insane paradox of choice where it's like you have a million options at your fingertips. Like if something is not right, or oh, you don't like this person's prompt or photo or whatever, it's like whatever, I can just like move on to the next person. And that's not like how actually getting to know someone works.
mhm.
So, I wanted to kind of remove a bit of that bias that comes with being on apps. And at the time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and specifically dating podcasts. That's just like what I was enjoying listening to. The Call Her Daddies of the world, and that's like when it was really big in 2019. And I just felt like I couldn't relate. Like it was enjoyable for me to listen to, but I was like, me and Alex Cooper are not going to have the same experiences dating.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of other people who are listening to these podcasts and can't necessarily relate to like these rules and experiences that these people are putting out there, because it's very centric to one person's kind of experience.
Mhm.
So I was like, how do I bring other people's experiences of dating to the forefront? And so I came up with the idea of Drinks First, where I interview anonymous singles. They're all different kinds of people, age, gender, sexuality, race, and they're anonymous. So they have like a really free space to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And if you're interested in somebody after listening to them talk about themselves for 45 minutes, like maybe you'd be interested in meeting them. So you have the opportunity to match with them either platonically or romantically.
Yo, I think a fire concept, right? Because I think like hearing people talk about themselves and their experiences, like that is essentially like what a first date really ends up being. And
Exactly.
but here's the problem with like first dates is that you usually get like the most clean cut, like best version of that, right?
Hmm.
Whereas like if you're talking to you on a podcast and anonymously, I'm getting like all of it off, right?
Yes.
Like, and then it's up to whoever's on the consumer end to be like, do I fuck with this person or do I not? But at least they have like a decent amount more than like a 5-second view on Hinge of
Exactly.
who that person is. So I'm assuming like you have success stories, right?
Yeah, so, I started this when I was like 22, 23 years old. And so I think success at that age in dating looks very different than like success at like 26, 27 years old. And I think that has grown with me over time
Mhm.
and also with my consumer base. Like when I was 22, 23, 24, like I was down to just go at like success to me was like going on as many dates as I could, like
Mhm.
meeting as many people. Success for some of my friends who are in their like later 20s might be I want to settle down or I want to like, meet a partner who's a bit longer term.
Mhm.
And so when people always ask about success stories about drinks first, I'm like, yeah, like I have success stories of people who have dated for like 2+ years of people who have moved in together, X, Y, and Z. But it's also success to me is did you have a connection with someone? Did you hook up with them? Is this person your friend now? Like, those are all successes to me as well.
Yo, that's a fire perspective, and I, like, want everyone to, like, re-listen to that like, that part, right? Because I think when we think about dating, and that's why people have this, like, almost, like, negative exhaustion with dating, is because we look at it as, "Hey, if we didn't end up in a 2-year relationship or
Mhm.
a 1-year relationship or a 5-year or we didn't end up married," it's like, "Oh, no, like, this was, like, such a waste of my time, space, energy," right? And, sometimes it was, right? But a lot of the times, it really is, like almost like data collection, right?
Yeah,
Like data collection and an experience collection, right? Sometimes you like, hey, I spent 6 months with you. We didn't end up like working, right? But I learned a lot about me as a person,
exactly.
you as a person. We had some good times, we had some bad, right?
Yeah.
And but I don't think that we get that gauge because of our age, right? Like at 22, 21, 22, like it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. And at 27, you're like, damn, I just wasted a year of my life and I'm 27, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, look, I don't really believe being in any relationship is a waste. Like you said, I think you can walk away from any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or even, relationship with your family. Like you can walk away from an interaction learning a little bit more about yourself
mhm.
and that other person and how you kind of function. So, good or bad, I think any relationship you walk away with like a learning experience.
I think, like, you get to have that, like, grasp because I think everybody looks at because everyone personalizes, like, their own experiences with, like, relationships because, of course, it's normal, right? It's an emotional thing that we do,
Mhm.
right? But you get to see so many, and especially from, like, what you do, right? You get to see so many
Yeah.
inceptions, you get to see so many, like, maybe not, right? And you get to,
Yeah,
like, take all of those as just, like, oh, everybody's unique experiences, right?
exactly.
And be able to say like, "Yo, these are patterns that happen to everybody," right? Are we all just gonna walk around like miserable because we got broken up with, or that's just not a real reality? But you get to see that, like,
Yeah, and also I can't keep track of like how many successes there have been at Drinks First because obviously outside of the podcast I also have the events
yeah,
and I don't have eyes on like every single person at every
hmm,
single event and like there are a lot of people there who don't know me majority of people there don't know me personally so they're
hmm.
not like hitting me up being like oh I met someone or I hooked up with someone or I ended up like becoming best friends with this person like I don't get that feedback that often, but every now and then I do get it, and I'm like,
Hmm.
there's so many stories here that I just don't even have tabs on.
There's definitely a lot of stories because every time I see a recap dump, there's always at least like 3 people making out.
Yeah,
So,
there's always something happening.
there's like we have evidence of like, yo, it's
There's stuff
working.
happening. There's
Yeah, it's
stuff
working.
happening.
Yo, this is just my thing. You get to be, or you are at the center of like a New York City New York City nightlife experience, right? Like you've probably seen it all at this point, right? Like is like when you go to your events, parties, right? Like are you enjoying like the actual like party event element of it?
Yeah, I mean, I have fun for sure. I do view it very much as like it is my job to
Mm,
make sure that everything is going smoothly. So, I always have like some level of stress going into almost all of my events. Like and I think that's a good thing because it means I care.
yeah, of
Like
course.
so I it's a lot of micromanaging, a lot of like, I want to make sure that security is tight, that the VIP guest list is taken care of if there is one. DJs are happy, the music is good, the lighting is correct, is it too hot? Like those are all things that I have to like keep my tabs on. Like if somebody's blowing up my phone for something. So like I'm working when I'm at these events. There's usually a threshold after a certain amount of time that, like, I can be like, "Okay, majority of the event has passed, and I can have a good time, and I can just, like, let go a little bit." But sometimes that doesn't happen, and I have to be on the whole time. So, I do enjoy it, but I do get it's my job, and I get a lot of enjoyment of seeing people enjoying those spaces.
No, for sure. So like we like talked about this like a little bit like earlier. So some of the work part of it is though you are now like the obviously like the face of like the thing, right? So obviously like some people are here to see Ariana, right? So like you have to manage because you're
I
like
guess.
because yes, you're hosting and you're figuring hosting from like a logistical perspective, but you're also like the host of like this like party too,
Yeah.
right? Like so I'm sure like people are coming to you for like whatever they need, like guest list needs, bottle needs, whatever it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I mean, I've been so lucky that a lot of the times people come up to me because they say, "Oh my god, like, I saw this on TikTok or I saw this on Instagram or whatever, and, like, I had to come and I was, like, really excited to, be here and see what this is all about, and, like, thank you for putting this on, thank you for, like, creating this space," and, like, I'm so lucky that so many people come up to me in a night and say that to me, and that's, like, a lot of the conversations I do end up having with people. Like, last night I had an event, and this girl came up to me, and she's like, "I'm from Paris, and, like, I saw this on TikTok, and I was like, I'm gonna be in New York City this weekend, I wanna go to a Drinks First event." And she pulled up, and I was like, "That's sick." Like,
No, that's so far because like to kind of like the point that we made at like the top of the pod, right? Was yo, you go to certain like venues in like the city and like they're niche to one audience or the other, right? Like
mhm,
I know if I had my like if I just went to like my regular spots, honestly, like, of course, it's New York City, so there's always gonna be some level of diversity, but it's probably gonna lean one way or the other, right?
yeah,
And I think, like, that's the part of, like, your parties that is, like, super cool because it is actually, to me, a true reflection of what New York City, like, looks like, right? Which is, I think, so fire. Like, because it's, like, people that, like, hey, like, I probably would not see you, interact with you
yeah,
because we just don't be hanging in the same, like, venues, circles, right?
yeah, absolutely.
But in these events, it's like, yo, like, oh, like I met somebody who like just came from like Iowa, right? And they're like here on like their New York City journey. And I'm just like, yo, like I wouldn't ever like if I saw you, like I probably wouldn't, but we're here. Right.
Yeah,
And we have like some sort of like, hey, we're in the same space, we're vibing to the same music. It really is just the facilitating of the environment itself, right?
yeah.
And I again to your is that like something that you came in like super mindful of?
It was definitely, like, it was something that I cared a lot about. So I started the podcast and I knew that I wanted it to have a lot of diverse voices on it.
Hmm.
So I majority of people are kind of within the same age range, like in their 20s into their 30s. Um because I mean, for matching purposes and who listens to my podcast, like those are the people that would like have higher chances of like meeting people. But I wanted that ethos to continue into my events. Like I wanted a diverse space. Like I wanted spaces that were queer friendly, that were friendly to people of color, that were friendly to, you know, I wanted to make inclusivity cool. And
Mm.
I feel like there's a lot of talk in New York City about, the most exclusive thing is the thing that's the coolest. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Like,
The most exclusive thing is the thing that's the coolest, or the coolest thing is the thing that's most exclusive? Say that bar again.
I think it could be either way. Like, this thing is cool because it's exclusive,
Mhm.
or this thing is exclusive because it's cool. Like, I think it's like a
It could be. And you're saying you disagree or agree with that?
I I kind of disagree to a certain extent.
Mhm.
I think a lot of hype is driven by exclusivity, and there are spaces that benefit from being exclusive here and there. Like some of my events are exclusive because people want a more curated space, but
Mhm.
I want to balance that out also with larger events that are inclusive to anyone, that are free, that there's no barrier to entry. You just pull up, you have a good time. Like the Jane, Georgia Room, like those kinds of events let me create like larger community, and then I can have smaller events that are a little more curated, a little more exclusive, meaning it facilitates a better chance for like people to meet. So, I think it's a balance of both things, but inclusivity in the larger sense, like having people who look very different from one another, who come from different parts of the city or different parts of the world, even like if they're coming and visiting, that's all important to me because that's what makes an interesting room of people.
No, for sure, and I think that's, like that actually makes it cooler, and I think, like, a lot of, like, what we see as like mainstream hype, like disregards that element of it, right? Like, yo, like, listen, at the end of the day, these are all venues, right? They all have a DJ, they all got music, they all have alcohol, they all have whatever
Mhm.
the you need to have a good time, right? So it really ends up being the event, like the space is really determined by like the people,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, cause we like, do we think that like the music system at like Little Sister is better than like no, like and we honestly as consumers don't care,
Yeah.
right? But it
Some
really
people care a lot about that, and that's like a niche group of people, but like generally a space is a space. Like it's about the people who are in it and like the mindset of the people who are there, you know? Are people vibing? Are people like off to the side not talking to one another? Like you need to facilitate a good space for a party, and I think that comes with like a good venue, good music, and like the right people showing up.
Yeah, for sure. Curious just because your opinion on it, right? Because you're somebody who's in these spaces. What is your favorite place to go out in the city?
You know, that is an interesting
Outside of a drinks
question.
first event.
No, yeah. But a lot of my, like, social life and nightlife now is going to drinks first events because they
Mhm,
happen so often, and I'm getting old and, like, I can't go out as much as I
mhm.
used to, or it's a drinks first event, or if it's, like, my friends throwing something or X, Y, and Z. Also now being hospitality adjacent, I get, like, preferential treatment at certain venues,
Mhm.
so that's always nice. Like, it's nice to pull up at Georgia Room and know that I can get in, skip the line, like, be treated really well, like, love going to Georgia Room. The staff's great to
Yeah,
me, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Like, but that's not everybody's normal experience, but
Mhm.
like it's mine. So a lot of the venues I work with, I love going to, like Georgia Room, Discolo, and also I've always been very picky about my venues. I will only throw a party at a place that I would actually want to go.
Interesting. Talk to me about that, right? So like how do you make that distinction determination? Like do you go there first, like to party on a regular night?
Yeah, so I mean, I will usually try and vet a venue like beforehand, or if I know like friends who have DJ'd there before, or have done parties there, or like I know it's on the come up, like I will go check it out. I've always been interested in nightlife. I've been like clubbing in the city since I was like 16. So I feel like I've always had that interest. And if a space is cool, like I want to bring it to my community. Um, so all of these places that I've worked with, and I think it is part of the recipe to success, is like I'm not saying yes to every single place that's like, yo, like let's do something with like I want to do something with you. I want to have an event at my space. If I'm like this isn't really my vibe, if I wouldn't go here on a normal night, like I don't want to bring my community here.
Yo, I think that's so fire for you to say, and I did not know. Like, I'm assuming, right, because you have care for the thing that's like your baby, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's you. Of course, you have care for it, but it's so fire for you to hear, right? Because I think a lot of people, once they get into like even the position that you've worked your way into, is hey, this person is offering me like said XYZ bag, like I'm just gonna take it, right? And then the product is then hurt, right? Because like the cool thing about like your stuff, and I'm not just saying this because you're on, right? I also hate going out. Again, I'm gonna repeat that, right? But I'm you're basically with in my books, I've been to 3 drinks first things, right? 3 for 3, right? So, no, if I went out and, like, the first time it was, like, bullshit venue, bullshit DJ, whatever, right?
Exactly.
I'm probably next time my friends hit me to go, like, "Yo, like,
Nah.
Ariana's throwing an event," I'm like, I'm good,"
Yeah.
right? So, like, I think it's, like, super cool that, like, you are taking that curation of, like, the space because that's what people are really entrusting in you, right? Because
Yeah.
anybody can go anywhere, like, any
Exactly.
party, right? Like, it's New York
Anybody
City,
can go
there's
anywhere. Anybody can go spend their money wherever they want. Like, I want to make sure that I have a high bar for quality. So I only want to work with venues that one are excited to work with me, two I deem are like not that I'm the north star of like what's cool, but like something that I would want to go to outside of like any drinks first event. I'd be excited like, "Oh yeah, like that's sick. She's doing something at Ray's. Like I love going to Ray's. Like let me just pull up because that's like someplace I would want to go anyway."
yeah, yeah.
Um
But
and
you say like, yo, like you're not the North Star of all things, but for some people, it is. Like for some like for like again, right? Like I think it's like because anytime like people give you their attention or their time or their money, right? Like it is a trust in like the person, right?
yeah.
Like we were talking about this earlier, right? Like there's businesses in like New York City that I support because I know the people behind it and those people are fire at what they do, at who they are, right? So I want to like if I'm going to spend my money going out anyway, I might as well spend it
And
with
that's a
like
privilege. Like, it's a privilege that any person who chooses to come to any of my events, whether it's paid or it's free, that they chose to spend their free time coming, potentially waiting in a line for a decent amount of time to get into that space. I want to make sure that those experiences are worth it to people. And even even last night, like I had an event and it was like a smaller event, it was like 100, people. And I'm like pulling up to the spot. It's the first time I've done something there and I was so nervous. In my head, I'm like, what if it's weird? Like, what if people aren't vibing? Like, what if the music isn't like what I like right for the space or something? That's always going through my head.
mhm.
I'm always concerned about if people are having a good time.
Even now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel like, yo, you've been doing this for a while now. You've been and you do it so consistently that I would figure like, yo, you come in and it's like, yo, for like not like formulaic, right? But like, yo, I have a good grasp of like what this is gonna be.
It is to a degree. Like, if I'm at a venue that I'm at over and over and over again,
Mhm.
like, I trust them. They know how run of show goes. Like, that's easier for me to just like walk in and be like, okay, cool. Like, I know how this is gonna go. They know how this is gonna go. Like, I can walk in a little less stressed out. But when I'm at new spots, like I am curating the vibe there for the first time, like I'm nervous. Like, and but also I think there's more pressure as I've grown because I have more new people who have like a high opinion of what drinks first is.
Mhm.
And so I want to make sure that I'm consistently delivering to those people, what they see on TikTok, what they see on Instagram is real. Like, it's not just hype, it's a good event. You're going to meet cool people, you're going to have a fun time, but as it grows and grows and grows, like there's more people to satisfy. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I get actually even more nervous now than I was in the beginning.
Do you get negative feedback or do you get criticism?
Very rarely, but I there are always situations that, I warrant some people sometimes being like confused or pissed off or X, Y, and Z. Also, when you're in nightlife, you deal with people who are drunk.
Mhm.
So in the moment, it they can just be like
Get dicey or whatever.
exactly, exactly. But there's also an element of like being active on like social media and like responding to DMs and doing like quote unquote community management that I really have to be on top. Okay, if this person like needs a refund for their ticket or they have a question about the event or X, Y, and Z, like I have to be on top of like fielding all of that as well. So
Because they again back to like our original point about people spending money with and where they feel like they're valued, right? Like that is like your like community that you have
yeah,
to foster. They have to feel appreciated, right? Because again, like yeah, you've built the trust, and that's why they're there, and that's why they come out every other week, every month, right, to whatever Ariana's doing, right? But that's a trust that was like built, right? So you don't want to like
exactly.
break that. So how have you like managed that as like drinks first and you as a like personality have grown, right? Because it probably
Yeah,
started like, hey, I'm managing like my friends like request feedback for what this
exactly.
is
Yeah,
to now like, yo, there's like a lot of people coming here and like no no matter how well you plan something out, there's going to be grievances and there's going to
yeah.
be like, hey, like I didn't have whatever, right? How are you managing that as this thing grows?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I think I've learned as one I've grown on social media, not just drinks first, but also like somewhat of an internet
Hmm.
personality that you cannot make everyone happy. Like
Hmm.
it's just not it's never going to happen. Someone's always going to be pissed off at you about something. Someone's always going to find some way to criticize you, and that is just like name of the game if you're putting yourself out there.
Hmm.
And so managing that expectation, knowing that that's probably coming your way, like it's sometimes it hurts, like I can take it pretty personally in certain like situations, but you just got to take it on the chin and be like, "All right, is this a learning experience for me? What can I is this a valid criticism? If so, like what can I do to make it better? Can I have a conversation with this person or is it something that I can improve in a future event or X, Y, and Z?" Um and then just being like I don't know, I try and just be like as honest as I can like on my social media.
Hmm.
So being as transparent, as honest, like trying to field questions. There's a lot of DMs that I get, so like trying to be on top of that. It's a lot. And as I grow, I'm going to have to continue to keep that in mind, but it's you just got to know like you can't make everyone happy, but it's a gift that people care enough to tell you what you might be doing wrong, and you should take that and listen to it and see if it's actually something that you can implement like going forward.
Yo, I think that I'm glad that you said that because I think there's a like a weird relationship with like negative feedback, right? But I actually think like the worst thing that you can do when you put out a product is get indifference, right? Because it means that people just don't care, right? Because if
Yeah.
I'm like annoyed enough or whatever enough to like hit you with like feedback, then it means like I like have to care to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Because I've gone to like multiple places where like I've gone out and it's been like a shitty night, but who am I like am I gonna go tell like the manager at DL like yo this shit sucked,
Yeah.
right? Probably not, right? Like I just don't care enough to like
Also, you have to remember that like more often than not, people are quicker to tell you when you did a bad job than when you did a good job. So,
for sure.
for all of the people that I'm hearing from that might have grievances or criticism, which very luckily has been very few people,
Mhm.
um, there are a ton of other people who aren't telling you how much fun they had or that that was worth my time or worth my money to like go to that event. So,
But the cool part about what you have built is that like I hope that you see that like that should be like you should operate under that norm and assumption because your product has already been like validated essentially, right? Because if it was that, right? If it was like, hey, I'm not doing like the best of jobs, right? The marketplace would
it would
essentially
reflect.
the marketplace would
Yeah,
essentially tell you that, right? Like
definitely.
you would see like, yo, I can't be selling out these venues or I can't like move people to this venue that I'm trying to get people to go to. Like, but clearly because you can, it shows like, hey, the product is viable, like people have an affinity for it, people like enjoy the product.
Yeah.
Um Talking about like the product and like how far Drinks First has come, right? Like what do you see? Because this is the part that excites me about like this space and what you do. What do you see for Drinks First in the next 1 year, 5 years? Like, what is the future of this? Because you're already selling out like venues like a Georgia Room or a Jane, like historic New York City like venues, right? So, what is like for you, like personally, what is like that next thing?
Yeah, I mean, so events only happened 2 years ago. I've been doing the podcast for 4 years. The events started happening, like, right after COVID, and it was not planned
Hmm.
at all. It was never in I didn't have a business plan. It was never in my business plan. I started Drinks First as a hobby. I never thought this would be a business,
Hmm.
and starting events and seeing the success that it has had and how many people it's resonated with, like, I like you said, the market reflects on like what you're doing. So you have to listen to your consumer. People are saying we want more of this, give them more of it.
Hmm.
So that's what I started doing. I was seeing that people were really enjoying events and I get feedback, "Oh, you should do something bigger, you should do something smaller. I want something with an activity, X, Y, and Z." Like that's feedback you take and you run with it. And so that's what I did. And now I'm doing events 1 to 2 times a month in the city. And what I would love to do going forward is that dating and meeting people is not just an issue in New York City. It's
Hmm.
an issue in almost every single place. So I would love to bring Drinks First to different cities. And
Really?
I don't know if that would mean just starting with events in certain cities or even bringing like a chapter of the podcast to the city. Like, is there Drinks First Miami where there's like maybe there's a different host than me who does the podcast and then there's also Drinks First events that happen in Miami. Like those are things that I want to start exploring in terms of expansion. Like and I get DMs every single day from people being like, "Can you do this in London? Can you do this in LA? Can you do this in North Carolina?"
Hmm.
Like there is a need from people. There is an interest. So I'm listening to my consumer base and I'm like, okay, that's where I need to go next. And I think that's like what the maybe next like few years might look like for Drinks First.
Yo, I think, and I don't feel like I don't need to tell you this, but I'm gonna like say it anyway. Like I know that this started off as like a hobby to you, but like I know based off of like your work ethic and like things, like I know that you understand that this is like now a real business and you have like a very unique opportunity. And like that's the part that like why I even asked like, hey, what's down the line 5 years? Because I am like, yo, you're doing like Drink Source is already like this popping thing, and you could be like fine with that, right? But like I'm glad that like there's like an aspiration because like it is now, despite of how it started, is a real is
I
a real
know
business.
it's a
You
thing.
have like a very unique position now that you've worked towards, right? And now it's like, yo, like take it further, right? And like that's the part that excites me because I'm all like, yo, like you start off like hobby, whatever, right? Now it's like a real flourishing business that's gonna be self-sustaining, but you could always bring that. And like the cool part is like that like your level of inclusivity, like that's how these things change at a like a macro level, right? It
Yeah.
starts with like you bringing out like, hey, different people to like a Georgia room, but then it goes to you bringing different people out in all types of like cities, countries,
Yeah.
wherever, right? That's like super fly, and like that's like the part that excites me about like seeing anybody operate theirs, and especially seeing you operate within like a space that I don't really know that many South Asians that are in the nightlife space.
Yeah.
Right, because that's what you are right now. At this point, like, yeah, you have Drinks First the podcast, but you are in the nightlife space of New York City.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about this before, but I do want to like harp on it again or come back to it, is that like as a South Asian person, like Drinks First is inherently like a product created from a South Asian person, but it's not specific to the South Asian community. And it's very inclusive of the South Asian community. I love being Indian. I love catering to our community and like doing stuff that brings our culture to larger groups of people, but it was never intended to be like just a South Asian thing, and it's not. And so I think what's so important about that is that when I'm in certain spaces, it's like, oh, well, I don't see a South Asian in nightlife. I don't see many women in nightlife.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen a South Asian woman in nightlife, like
Yeah.
in the way that I've been operating in it. Um, and I think that's just like, because I'm like, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna do it. Doesn't matter like what my background, my ethnicity, like none of that matters. Like, I have so much pride for who I am and where I came from, and I
Mhm.
want to continue to give back to my community. But what's exciting about this is that it's for everyone.
And I think that's like the fire part. Like I think people focus in on too much on like, yo, I got to give back to this community. But you being who you are and operating the way and where you are is already giving back to the community, right? Because it's like, yo, for somebody like looking up like, yo, somebody who's like 16, 17, 18 right now, like, yo, there is a South Asian woman in that space, right? Like you don't have to like, I think a lot of us as in like South Asians, right? We get to these places and then we feel the need to like, oh, we have to actively give back to community because like that's what the community demands of
Yeah.
us, right? And my like counter to that is like, yo, them even doing what they're doing, being South Asian, because you're not denying like, yo, I'm not South Asian, right?
Yeah, of
It's like
course.
you are a South Asian woman. Like that's like who you are. So no matter what you do, that's always gonna be a service to that community, right? Like people now can look up and be like, yo, there's a South Asian woman doing this in the space. And even from a more tangible thing, yo, you have now game. Like you have now like how this system works. Whereas like when you came up, like you even said, there was no business plan for this, right? Like you happened, you figured it out. But now like, yo, you have the knowledge on this. So if somebody is trying to do something in this space, when you go out to Miami, yo, there's an opening in New York for like, yo, we need more people to do this. Yo, Ariana, like, yo, tell me how you did this.
Yeah. And there's one. Have you heard of Brightland olive oil? Have you ever like seen ads for
The
that?
actual olive
The
oil? Yeah,
actual
yeah,
olive
yeah.
oil, like, it's, like, bougie ass, like, nice olive oil, really
Mhm.
well designed, like, I don't know if it started as direct to consumer, but, like, really blew up. I only found out, like, in the past few months, the founder is a South Asian woman.
Fire.
And, like, you don't need to know that about, like, and bright, like, who would have thought, like, olive oil, you know? Like, she was just, like, doing her thing, had a passion, like, lived out in California, created this brand, and I think that that is the kind of representation that's, like, so cool to me. It's, like, these experiences and things that are being created for a really wide audience of people, but then the person behind it is, like, this sick South Asian, like, person who put it together, and I think that's, like, what I really wanted for Drinks First, which is like is an experience for everyone.
Mhm.
And it's going to be easier to kind of support and give back to your community when you don't niche down into your community.
No, absolutely. Like I think like yo, that's like the bare. I think like that's like the bare minimum, right? That like yo, if you're like South Asian, like spending money inside the South Asian community, that's gonna happen a given, right? Like our moms are going to buy like South Asian like chai and like South Asian like rice and like whatever. Like that's going to happen anyway. Like that's like the bare minimum, right? But I think like when we start like really thinking about like this like long term, it ends up being when like South Asian culture and like in each individual cultures are brought to like the mainstream, because then
Exactly.
that's when the wider media and like look up and are like, oh, like this shit is cool,
Yeah.
right? Like
That's
this,
where the influence happens.
right? And I know like you've in the past have done like the volley events, right? And I think like that part is like, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, like that is cool to me because it's like a, I hate using this word, but it's like because it's like overused. Like it's like a rebrand of things that like we know in our culture is like fly, right? We're just like, oh, like South Asian music is fly, whatever. But hearing it out at like places where you're like, oh, it's actually like cool. Like we knew that,
Yeah.
but now everybody gets to see like people in South Asian dress, people at like South Asian DJ that's playing like a Bollywood track on a garage beat, right?
Exactly.
Like that makes hey, like, and it's not like, oh, we're just making it for South Asians, so it only has to be cool to South Asians.
Yeah.
Yo, like it has to be, or it is cool to
Everyone.
everyone, right?
Yeah.
Because I think like a very South Asian trope is like wanting that validity
Yeah.
from everyone, right? Because you didn't probably get it
Yeah.
like your community knew what like samosas were when you brought that shit to lunch, but
You
like
got gas
Tom
for
and
it at
Pete,
school,
like
yeah.
Tom and Peter were like, "Yo, what the fuck is that smell?" Right?
Mhm.
But that's why I think like seeing those things in the mainstream is like so fly because it's like, oh, y'all didn't know like even like a couple years ago, right? Like people didn't know what like chai was, right? Like, oh, my mom made chai. Like I could never tell somebody that, right?
Yeah, like,
Like
it wasn't as mainstream as it is
is
now, it
now,
wasn't
right?
considered cool, and that's the thing, it's like, with Diwali specifically, and we were talking about this before, like, Diwali last year was the first time I'd ever thrown an event that, like, kind of not revealed, it wasn't like I was hiding that I was South Asian, but it
Mm-hmm.
was, like, something that I was like, "I wanna do this for the community, I have the access and the ability to do it."
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wanna put on an event for our community and all of their friends, and I was saying this earlier that, I grew up in the city, I have tons of friends from different nationalities, I celebrated Chinese New Year with friends. I've gone to Shabbat with friends and temple and Christmas and X, Y, and Z. But whenever it came to celebrating the Diwali, it was very insular within our community. And I was like, it's such a fun celebration of life. Like, why can't we do it with our extended communities? Like, let's bring something really special and cool and bring in like the people who are doing really cool things. Let's have chai at the event, have somebody selling kati rolls, let's have the DJ be South Asian, but it's not meant to be only for our community. It's for everyone else to see it and experience it.
No, and I think that's like super valuable, and I'm glad that you look at it that way because I think what we describe as like culture, right? Like we talk about individual cultures, right? But there is a collective culture, like as a whole, right? Like in terms of like, for example, like in America, like everybody, no matter what, most people celebrate like Thanksgiving. That's like a part of the culture,
Yeah.
right? But that's again because it's been expanded and given to everybody, right? So like having even though like a South Asian like holiday like the Diwali, right? And bringing it to like the masses and be like, yo, like this is still fun, right? This is just as fun as like whatever like holiday that you may have, right? And why wouldn't I just like have you come in and enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
And then like you start like then developing an affinity for the people, an affinity for the food. Cause like you said, you serving kati rolls, like somebody might come that's not even from this like space. Of course, people are coming that
Exactly.
aren't South Asian, and then they come and they're like, yo, you know what I just realized? I love kati rolls.
Yeah.
Right?
Like it's who knew at like 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm drunk, like what I wanted was a kati roll.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Because like we go to like yo, like late night drunk food, pizza, right?
yeah.
But that's because that's what's like accessible, given, right?
Yeah.
But hey, like now I realize, like yo, I'm a drunk kati roll type of guy, right? Like,
Exactly, like, you could be, and it's just about, like, bringing that sort of access to other people outside of the South Asian community, and it can be I think there are amazing brands being built currently and friends of mine who are building them, like, these really amazing, like, either South Asian media companies or music companies, X, Y, and Z, and they're really revered by the South Asian community, but now they're having a hard time breaking out of that mold,
mm-hmm.
and so and not that you have to, like, there are a billion South Asians in the world,
Yeah,
like, there's
yeah,
no you're probably not gonna find a market cap in that, like, community, but if you want to reach more people, like, it's harder when you're niche down and then outside communities don't feel necessarily welcomed in
Mhm.
those spaces because it's like, oh, well, this is kind of like a South Asian thing. Like, I don't want to intrude on their space. So,
But it's so important because we as South Asians get so excited when people do break out into those
yeah.
other spaces, right? Like I forgot where I saw it. Like I think like for example, like Diljit going to Coachella, right?
Yeah.
Where like yo, like that's like an American culture thing, like Coachella, right? Diljit is like
Like
South Asian,
in
but
the studio with Diplo, you know?
yeah, in the studio with Diplo, and we're like, yo, he just transversed, like he broke out of like just being the South Asian most
Exactly.
poppin' singer to yo, he's now on a song with like Diplo. Because we see that across like we're starting to see it within South Asian cultures, but we've seen other cultures like do it, right? Like for example, like Diplo and like Major Lazer, like a very soca Caribbean like sound,
Yeah.
right? But that now, like nobody looks at that as like, oh, like soca Caribbean sound. That's bro, that's fucking Major Lazer, right? Like,
Yeah. And I do want to point out, though, that like that success should not be attributed to some white guy like Diplo being like, okay, this is cool now and like come on a track with me. So
for sure.
that's
For
like what I'm trying to do is like it doesn't have to just be validated by like other white people.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
no, build something fucking cool for everyone and then just have them see that it's like done by a South Asian person.
Yo, absolutely facts, right? Because like I think that sometimes it gets like, oh, like they gave him the look, right?
Mm.
But yo, the product is just so fire. They didn't like just graciously just give the look, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yo, the product, like Diljit was fire before.
He's been working.
He's
you
been
know?
working, right?
Yeah.
Like he knows he's fire, right? Like, yeah, did you like build it? But like you also had no choice. Like he's undeniable, right? And that's what I hope for like everybody who comes on and you, right? Like I want you to be undeniable in that space. And that's why I want you to start talking like your cash shit, right? Like I get the humbleness and I'm like a fan, right? But like I want you to like understand like, yo, like I move a community, right? And like it is the community that is now. In 5 years, like I move a bunch of people, right? Like and I did like you have to like recognize like I'm not like yo like I'm like Ariana, like I'm moving people to you, right? Like I am undeniable in what I do, right? And like I'm sure the people who peep what you do already recognize that, right? That's why you keep getting return offers. That's why you keep getting new
Yeah.
offers,
I
right?
mean, thankfully, really thankfully, I would not be able to do this, I think, if it didn't resonate with so many people. So, you know, I feel like I have to keep delivering at such a high bar that like people want to keep coming back. And that's what's important to me. And that's why, you know, venues approach me and brands approach me and they're like, let's do something. And those are the partnerships I'm most excited about because they know what I'm about, they know what I can provide, and they want to work with me. So I've just been grateful that that's like been the case for a lot of the growth that's happened here. Like I haven't done so much pitching of myself to like different places. A lot of people do come and approach me, which
Yeah.
has been amazing. Like that's a blessing.
Yo, since you said it earlier, what does your mom now think about this? She told you to go get a hobby and then you turn that shit into a full on like business and that,
Oh my
bro,
god, my dad's like, go to business school. I'm like, I'm not dropping a company I'm building right now to like go to business
business
school.
school, right?
Yeah,
Like this is business
I
school.
was like, literally, like
This is business school. Like, what are they gonna teach me that I'm not doing
I
right
know,
now?
you know, so my parents are so supportive. They're
Okay.
very proud of me. Like, my mom's like my biggest fan. She's like blowing up the WhatsApp group, sending
Yeah.
out the like articles I'm in and X, Y, and Z. So like they're really proud of me and they're really happy about like, you know, the things that I've been able to accomplish with Drinks
Do
First.
they grasp like what it is and how big it is? Because you're like I'm sure like you're recognized by like platforms that they probably like I've heard of and know, right? Like a New York Times, like
Yeah.
so like do they understand like the gravity of like who you are in this space?
I think yes and no. Like my brother told me the other day that my mom like asked him like, "Oh, is like 20,000 followers a lot or a little?"
Mm.
And you know, in the grand scheme of social media, it's not that much. It really like it isn't.
It is though, like
But
I get what you're saying. It's all relative, right? But like
it's
you
all
being able to
relative.
move 20,000 people anywhere is
Yeah, and like what my brother said to her was like, if you walked into a baseball stadium and like stood at center plate and just said something, imagine every single person in that stadium listening to you. Like that is the kind of reach that I have. And I think it's when you think about social media, it's really hard to like get into the numbers and be like, well, this person has 100,000 followers, this person has 1 million followers. Like it's very hard to actually put like every single one of those people chose to follow you for the most part. and I know that's true for me because I don't believe, not that I don't believe in paid marketing, but I've never done paid marketing. Everything is completely organic. It's word of mouth. It's, oh, I saw it because I saw it on TikTok. Maybe I made a TikTok and went viral, whatever. Never paid to boost anything. Like, I believe that if people are looking for it, they will come and find it. And if they find it, they will care a lot about it. And that's been true. I've had really high engagement
Yeah.
across, like, sure, I have 20,000 people following me, but that is translating to every event being sold
But
out.
I think that's because you're taking an organic, real route, right? Because
Yeah.
I obviously now, like, in this space, like, I'm interviewing people that have like 200,000, 100,000. But like what I think is super telling is when, you may have like 100,000 or 40,000 like followers, but anytime you post something or try to sell something, that should get like 15 likes or 20 likes.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, like your audience, like it may sound like a lot, but your audience really isn't moving for you.
They're
You're
not
just you're
engaged.
just like another face in like the social media stratosphere. Like I follow 2,000 people. You think 2,000 people actually impact how I move and what I do? But there are some people that I like, that move me,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I'm sure that's the case with a lot. And I think the cool thing about, like, again, because as a result of you building it organically and building it for the people that have found you, is that you are able to 1,000% move them, right? Like, and your product is such like a physical product in a sense that like you see the impact, right? Because it's like it's tough to get into like, oh, like I have like this many likes, like
Yeah.
who cares, right? But the more impressive about like, not you being 20,000 strong is that you're 20,000 strong and able to impact on a very physical, real level, which is like that part of conversion. Like I'm sure like you like figured that out in like business, right?
Yeah.
That's the more
That's the
difficult
most
part.
important
That's
thing.
the more difficult part,
Yeah.
right? Like
Even when you're working with brands, with venues, with whatever, the most important thing is the engagement that you get.
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't, if you if you have 1 million followers and 10,000 of those people are engaging with you, then you might prefer to go to somebody who has 50,000 followers, but 25,000 of those people are highly engaged. Yeah, and which is like a crazy engagement
Yeah,
rate, but
yeah.
like that,
Yeah, no, the conversion, because like you think
yeah,
like, because I have 1 million followers, I demand a certain bag, right?
yeah,
But if you're only realistically converting 10% of your audience, right? I might as well the same exact point you made. Go to the 50,000 follower that can move still 10%.
exactly.
Like,
So I mean, this was like a roundabout answer to your question, but like, I think it's hard for my parents at least to understand the like quantification of like how many people
that
are
you're really
involved. And
impacting.
yeah, yeah. And they've actually come out to events. Like
Really?
yeah, they've pulled up. They've like come to Georgia Room. They came to my like Virgin Hotel event. Like they see like what it's like. Okay, the space is packed, people are here, and they're like, who are all these people, you know? But I think it is very validating for them also to have like, oh, well, this was featured in the New York Times, this was in Fast Company, this was
Yeah.
on X, Y, and Z. And like, yeah, I mean, the first time I was in the New York Times, like my parents sent it to like my dada, like my dad's dad, my grandpa, and like he was like, that's something he can understand, you know? He's like, oh shit, like
You're in
this
the
is,
New York Times,
yeah,
right?
like this is a newspaper and like she's in it. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Talk about like giving back to like your community and culture, right? Like it's just so fly, right? Because like again, just based off of like who you are, being able to give that to like your grandfather and like seeing like
Oh my god, I was like 8
his
years.
his
I couldn't
like no
handle
like
it.
bro, like really think about it, like
Yeah.
seeing like his like very South Asian last name inside like the New York Times, like that it's just like so fly. I think like people like overcomplicate like what it means to give back, right? But I'm all like, like I can't even imagine like if my dad gets to see like published by or something by Aram Chaudhary in a space that he's grown up and like observed and respected,
Yeah,
right? Like he's gonna be like, holy shit, like think about like where he came from or where your family came from,
exactly.
and like being like new to America, right? And like and now getting to see like
Yeah.
my last name inside one of the most historic, if not the most historic.
Dude, my dad has had a like paper subscription to the New York Times for at least the past 20 years. Like, I didn't tell them that I was going to be in it like at all, and I just waited until he got his paper copy and I was like, "Go turn to this page and like show me what you see." And he was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, that's so fly,
Oh,
right?
that was like the best. Like
That's
I
so fly.
yeah,
So
trade that for anything.
what is the next Drinks First event, or what is in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I am doing an event. I don't know when this episode's gonna come out, but I'm doing an event for Halloween, which will be at Discolo. on October 27th. I haven't announced it yet, but I am doing the volley again at Georgia Room. So it will be in the second week of November on a weekend. I'll announce the date more specifically on my Instagram.
Yeah. We will have all of Ariana's and Drinks First, like, stuff in the bottom, but, like, yo, pop out because I am gonna go to the Volley event.
Yeah, absolutely. Come through.
I'm 1,000% gonna go to that because, yo, especially now that I met you, like, I just want you to, like, from me to you, like, first time, like, meeting, right? Yo, like, keep going. Like, I hope you see, like, I know you see the vision for yourself, right? And I want you to know that, like, yo, like, people see the vision for you, right? Like, people believe in you, like, yo, keep that up, right? Because, like, this type of stuff is, like, what we need, right? And, like, I know it's, like, work. I know you have, like, you're telling me, like, you have a full-time job on top of this. You're doing this. Like, I know it's work, but, like, I want you to know it's, like, super valuable to you, but, yo, it's super valuable to so many people that you may not even, like, really comprehend how many people it really does
I
impact.
actually don't think I can comprehend, and that's, like, the craziest thing, so I appreciate that.
No,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you, Ariana, for doing this.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it.
Thanks for having me.
Whew. We good? Amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.